Good evening, my name is Monty Martin.
And I'm Kelly McLaughlin.
And we are the Dungeon Dudes. Welcome to our Kickstarter closing live stream for Sebastian Crowe's Guide to Drakenheim.
We're going to be chatting with you for the next 2 hours about the Kickstarter, questions that you might have about Sebastian Crowe's Guide to Drakenheim, and kind of just hanging out.
Yeah, and for all of you that are following along with us live, it's actually been a while since Kelly and I have streamed in person in the studio from the dungeon. So please bear with us if there are any technical gremlins out there in chat. Please let us know and we'll do our best to nip those in the bud as we come along. But for now, we just want to take your questions, have fun, and celebrate the amazing journey that we have been on over the past month in particular since the Kickstarter launched, and the past year in leading up to launching this project even in the first place, and think about all the amazing things that are still yet to come.
Yeah, so if you have any questions for us, make sure to put in capital letters question, followed by your question, and we'll be grabbing those from the chat and just chatting about this Kickstarter as much as we can. And yeah.
Yeah, and forgive me as well if it looks like I am looking around in various different directions during the stream. It's because I got stream chat up here and someone's got to keep an eye on the tech.
Yeah, Monty's doing all of the tech work. I got the chat open here. So it's not going to be like a regular episode where even in a regular episode, we look all over the place.
Yeah, it's so challenging. We stop and start so many times when we are filming normally like this that I think, generally speaking, we usually look at how much we've recorded and been like, yeah, about half of that's going to make it into the final cut.
It's my main job as an editor is cutting out like 10-minute segments where we stop to read the books and other such things like that. That's when people are like, why don't you release the full hour-long video footage? I'm like, do you want to see Monty and I with the player's handbook going, oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Yeah. Or all the times that I forget I have a very noisy mini fridge in the studio, forgetting to turn that off. There's a pretty busy street nearby us, and so
sirens.
We can get sirens a lot that interrupt the filming. Sometimes if there's any footsteps upstairs, or if there are even any sort of ambient noises, or if I forget to turn on my computer or off my computer that runs the stream, it has like a super loud fan, and so hopefully you're not hearing the computer.
Yeah, we have all of those things currently running, so if you hear any ambient noises, we're sorry, this is just a basement hangout. It's a step below our normal professionalism that we try to pretend we have. First question from the chat here. Wondering if we will be getting new art. This is from Ash Nicholas. Of the new art of the faction leaders or lieutenants. Would love to see some art of the Queen of Thieves, Ansem, or Petra. What I will say is that we very specifically want art in this book, and I've seen a few sketches already of characters that we think may have been very important and missing from the first book. That includes some of the lieutenants. We might not get all of the faction leaders because keep in mind that this is a book about the wider world. Yeah. And so some of the faction leaders were very specific to Drakenheim, which makes up only a paragraph or so in this book.
Yeah, the city of Drakenheim and the factions of Drakenheim do have an entry in Sebastian Crowe's Guide to Drakenheim, of course, because it's a central point of conflict for the world at large. One of the cool things, though, is that if we do hit our $1 million stretch goal, which we are there, it's going to be down to the wire. We're super excited. We definitely have a laundry list of several monsters, non-player characters, and faction lieutenants that didn't get artwork the first time around, that we want to make sure that they have artwork for the VTT edition of Dungeons of Drakenheim. And I can say that Elias Drexel did get another piece of art already.
He's in the trailer.
He's in the trailer artwork as well. And I'm pretty sure we're gonna have artwork in the book of Ansem and Petra, regardless of how things go. Because I don't correct me if I'm wrong on this. I'm not promising you this. I think for the Urban Ranger subclass, Ansem and Petra were chosen to represent that subclass as the artwork in the book. So that's kind of one of the ways that we've snuck some things in, is that we found a couple characters from the stream to represent them through the subclass artwork and everything that we're going to have for Sebastian Crowe's. Got lots of questions coming fast.
PH Mick 5. That's how I'm going to say your name. Who are the old gods, and can you give us a few spoilers? You're much better at listing them.
Okay, I can't list them all off the top of my head, but I can list most of them. There's 12 detailed in the book, but the implication is that there's many more. The old gods form a loose pantheon, which were the earliest gods that were worshipped by humanity in the world of Drakkenheim. The worship of the old gods, however, was greatly suppressed during the reign of the Sorcerer Kings, because what many people don't realize is that the word Sorcerer King is a term that modern historians use to describe the Sorcerer Kings of old, where in the time of the Sorcerer Kings, they called themselves gods and ruled over their people as such. And so the rule of the Sorcerer Kings was largely responsible for why the worship of the old gods was pushed downwards in the world at large. And then when the faith of the Sacred Flame emerged, it sort of stepped in to fill that place as well and become the dominant religion. Nevertheless, the myths and legends of the old gods often tell the story of the creation of the world, although there are many contradictions. Some stories tell of how the smith god Gavin crafted the world of stone so that his wife Danu, the Mother Earth, could fill it with life. But others claim that, in fact, humanity and life itself were created by the beast god Crowe, and that humanity lived as beasts until Arwen, the moon hunter, tamed them. So the legends of the old gods are filled with contradictions and inconsistencies. They are often associated with very primal worship, and druids form the majority of their priesthood, as well as many barbarians, such as the path of the old god barbarian. Did the old gods make the world? Do they still speak to mortals? Is it true that they once walked the earth, as the old stories say? It's difficult to say, but the worship of the old gods gives characters and dungeon masters alternatives to the faith of the Sacred Flame. And if you want to get extra heretical, we actually have a couple offshoot sects of the faith of the Sacred Flame that try to merge the faith of the old gods and merge the faith of the Sacred Flame together in various interpretations. So the old gods fill a very diverse place in the world, and while we detail 12 of them in the book, there's probably many more than just what we've talked about there.
Yeah, we wanted to leave it open that if you don't like any of the old gods that we've presented, you could make up your own and just work with your dungeon master about incorporating that. One of my favorite things that we did with the old gods, though, is I've talked about this in a few chats, but there's this really cool thing that I got to do in the book where Monty had detailed some of the old gods, and he was like, we need to write a bit about them. What can we write? And I remember being like, what if we came up with a ritual and a worship for each old god? And sort of talked about what people who worship that old god do. Like, do they hang things in their home? Do they have a specific way that they pay tribute to that god? I think with the god of dreams, if you're suffering from nightmares, you're supposed to go find a piece of lavender root, chew it, and put it under your pillow to help absorb your nightmares. So little things like that. I actually got to do a lot of weird research. It's one of those things that as a writer, I love thinking about what my Google search must look like after I finish writing a book.
It's so incoherent. And
so we definitely dug into what rituals and worship look like for each of the old gods, and that's, I think, a lot of character inspiration can come from that.
Yeah, so a really great question here from William R. Emily W. J. My apologies, William. It's a good question, but we'll get to that one too. When did you start creating the Drakenheim setting? The very earliest genesis of Drakenheim, I think we posted this with Dungeons of Drakenheim, was I had this sketch of a ruined city. And I wanted to do a Mega Dungeon style campaign that had a unique environment that would change and react to the thing. So the early conceptual groundwork, I think, for Drakenheim really probably started sometime around 2015, 2016, before even we were doing Dungeon Dudes. But it really wasn't until we started talking about live streaming that I thought, oh, this is a cute idea. It'll be a fun throwaway for a live stream to try out live streaming. And so I really wasn't very precious with Drakenheim at the beginning. I thought this will just be a fun thing to whip up. We're going to do 12 episodes of this live stream. We're going to try out live streaming, see how it is. And probably after 12 episodes, we'll be sick of it. And we'll go back to playing our regular D&D games. At the time, I was running, I think I had just finished up running Tomb of Annihilation, and I also just run Red Hand of Doom. And did I run anything? No, because
we were wrapping up Red Hand of Doom when we started Drakenheim. Now, I actually think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Drakenheim to me felt like the metamorphosis of an earlier idea that you and I had ran.
Because we did do the city campaign. We had done that one as well, which drew a lot of inspiration from another Monty in the RPG world, Monty Hook's Tallis.
Yes.
And which is a much different city to Drakkenheim.
But I definitely have this memory of coming to you years ago, before we were streaming, before I think we were even doing Dungeon Dudes.
Yeah.
And we had a group that we played with here in the basement, and you had finished running, I think, the second campaign for us. And I was starting to get into this whole, like, I want to be part of the storytelling too, but I wanted you to run it. So I came to you with this pitch for this idea of, like, what if we took Majora's Mask and combined it with, like, Dark Souls-esque city?
Yes, and that was the Time Loop City campaign.
Yeah, so we ended up with a Time Loop City campaign. I wanted to play in it, and, like, I remember I worked with you on that campaign until a point where I was like, okay, we have a cool idea for the city. And then you took it away from me, and I was like, no, I don't get to know anything, which was for the best, because I wasn't allowed to know any of the secrets in the campaign, but I played a paladin. There were demons. I got to crit a demon with a smite. It was great.
I think that was our first 5th edition camp. No, because we did convert.
We switched to 5th edition
halfway through.
Yeah.
Another campaign. Yeah.
But yeah, that city campaign, I think, was kind of our first taste of, like, what it meant to have a campaign inside of an entire city. We got rid of the time loop, but for those interested, the time loop did come back in the form of one of the sites in Dungeons of Drakkenheim, which I actually think was really interesting. That's kind of our nod to our time loop campaign.
Yeah. I do want to come back to the question from someone that I skipped over. I believe his question was, are we going to do an official token set?
Yeah.
The answer to that is it's on the table. It's absolutely, tokens will be part of the VTT stuff that we do. Especially if we hit those stretch goals. Whether or not, I think, don't quote me on this, I think we're going to try to make the token set available separately from the VTT package as well. So we're bringing our VTT packages to Foundry and Roll20. I understand there's other VTTs out there, and the map pack is system neutral. So I think we should probably be able to do a token pack that is system neutral. But we'll just have to check all the logistics and everything like that. So we'd like to do it. Hopefully we can make that happen as well, because we got to make those tokens for the VTT anyways.
Here's a question from Brendan T. What character fantasy were you most excited to tackle for the subclass options? It's tough because I think we were both excited about so many of them, and it's hard. I'm going to not talk about the apothecary, because the apothecary was one of the most exciting things, but that was us designing our own class. I think the one I was most excited to bring to life was the one I played in our live stream last night.
Did you like that? You liked that monk?
I liked that monk a lot.
Yeah.
It's known, I think, in our channel. If you watch our channel, it's known that we have some things we would love to fix with the monk. But specifically, I have things I'd like to fix, but I also really do like the monk. I just wish it had more to offer. And so last night I got to try out the monk that, in my opinion, solves some of the things that I wish.
You know what we need to try though more, which I was surprised you didn't do in the live stream last night for playtesting purposes with that monk. We need to see how the polearm monk plays when you spam stunning strike. Because that
I didn't use stunning. Well, I kept killing everybody.
Yeah, you did, and that was a notable thing, right? Like, I guess you don't need to stun them when they're dead.
Yeah.
But I think that we need to do a couple playtest encounters with that monk, where instead of using a handful of really strong enemies, we need that too, but just seeing how the monk plays with like a group of solid mid-tier enemies that you can really move around with and stun, because being able to stun enemies with a polearm is pretty good.
Yeah. There's a lot of things to take into account. With last night's stream, we had very specific combat encounters that were in closed quarters, which played in an interesting way with certain aspects, but there's a lot more aspects to try out. But I was excited. I'm excited for the monk that you created as well, the way of the arcane hand.
Yeah.
I think just it's me and Monty making a statement on what we think monk subclasses should look like.
Yeah.
So that excited me. Was there one that excited you?
Oh, I think I love the Malfeasant wizard.
That's fair.
Yeah,
That's
fair.
fair.
I love me my wizards. I really like the Oath of Hex's paladin too. I love the concept of a witch knight. So for me, that was a real love letter sort of subclass as well. But also, Ginny playing the Doomslayer's Bard was kind of amazing.
It's so okay. What was amazing about watching Ginny play the Doomsayer's Bard is you write something down and you hope it captures the fantasy you're going for.
Yeah.
And Ginny just read it and like came out with, I think, the perfect interpretation of a Doomsayer Bard.
It was great.
It was so fun. It was so fun.
Gavin C asks a really important question. When can we expect to see the PDF? So, as many of you who might have backed our first campaign for Dungeons of Drakkenheim know, we successfully delivered the PDF from Dungeons of Drakkenheim in December of last year. This time around, things are going to be a bit different for one reason and one reason only. We are doing 2 months of playtesting phases starting in October that will be going on into December. This means two things. First, you're going to get all the player-focused content from Sebastian Crowe's Guide to Drakenheim starting in October when we start the Apothecary playtest. So this means that you will be able to start using that player content and playing that right away, because I think in October we're going to release the full Apothecary with all of its subclasses and all of the spells. And then in November, we're going to release all of the subclasses for playtesting. So you'll be able to find that on BackerKit, download all of the playtest materials, and then there'll be a feedback survey that you'll be able to give us feedback on of how the play experience went. And I will say, we're very particularly going to be asking in the playtest feedback form, did you play it? And we're going to be asking people to submit their stories from playing it, because we want to make sure that we balance that against the armchair feedback. It's really easy to read a playtest document and be like, this is broken, this is OP, this is not good. And we want that feedback too, because we want eyes on the language and the confusing thing, and there's definitely going to be things that people spot. But we really want to with your groups and planning your games now.
Question from John F. Have we playtested the Apothecary outside of the Drakenheim setting? I think in the specific question, what you're asking is like, are we always using the contamination mechanics and all of that? Because we did run a few playtests. All of them are loosely in the Drakenheim setting, but like, I ran one where there was really not a whole lot of Drakenheim going on.
We did a lot of playtests where basically we tried to do stock encounters, right? So I think you ran one for 5th level characters where it was like, here's 5 ogres.
Yeah.
And it was just, we did that.
Yeah.
Like, here's 5 ogres. Here's a bunch of ghouls. Here's a dragon. Like, when we were doing the early playtesting, that was kind of the idea. It was like, what is the simplest encounter we can build? And how does it feel like in this encounter? And then we kind of extrapolated that, because there was the one playtest encounter that we used that was, here's several dragons.
Yeah. So we really just like, we would theme them as Drakenheim. Like, I think I loosely was like, you're traveling into the Ochtenwald Forest. That's the theme for tonight. Mm-hmm. And then we just would throw nonsensical encounters at the party to be like, why are there ghouls in Ochtenwald? I don't know, because we're going to fight them and see what the Apothecary
does. Yeah, because
does.
reasons, right? Or like, so, and we really tried to use like very standard SRD monsters that represent either really boring monsters or really interesting ones. And it's really interesting, because I found from the playtest process, at least our stage of playtesting, because there's a difference between community playtesting and internal playtesting, and a different level of analysis. So for us, when we were playtesting, we chose to do things like, here's an encounter where all the monsters are the same, because we want to focus on how the class plays and how the rules play. So we chose encounters with very simple monsters, using them all in the same groups, so that all the attention was on the apothecary. And that meant that we could really examine those with a very neutral sort of palette. And then we started bringing in more complex mechanics and bringing in spellcasters and bringing in flying monsters and dragons and breath weapons and all of these things, and layering that on top of it with the encounters that we ran. But we don't necessarily want the community at large to do that kind of analytical playtesting. We would rather you just do whatever you would do normally for your game organically, and then give us that feedback, because it's kind of that difference between that white room level development and like now the real world testing. I guess if you would take the metaphor of, like, you know how when they're doing crash tests with a car and they put it on the track and they ram it into buildings, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a very specific type of testing. But but you need that real world data, because I think I remember learning this thing about crash testing, where one of the things that oftentimes cars fail their crash tests is they do all these head-on collisions with a brick wall. But in the real world, a lot of crashes are not head-on crashes. They're usually people getting T-boned, or like this 50-50 weird angle sort of thing. And oftentimes cars that do really, really well, like what can happen is you design the car to pass the white room crash test, not the real world scenario. So we need that real world data, right? Not the crash test anymore. Yeah.
I really like this question from Frostburn326. How would someone utilize any new monsters from Sebastian Crowe's in the original Dungeons of Drakkenheim books? So
very easily.
Very easily. Yeah. You're going to have to use your DM interpretation here, because they're not written into Dungeons of Drakkenheim. But whenever you have an otherworldly event happening, we have a bunch of monsters from the space between worlds that you're easily going to be able to grab and throw into the castle, or throw near the crater, or make your own random encounter. If you love the monsters, then as people get closer to the dangerous areas in the city, have these things show up. We also created the Maw Vermin, which I think if you're like encountering a lot of rats and you're like, yeah, I need a bigger, scarier, high-level rat threat, we got you. Yeah. There's also a ton of NPCs in this book that if you have Caspians showing up, if you want to use a different faction the same way we use Caspia in our stream, but you decide they're from a different nation, yeah, we have NPCs that you can use to fill those roles. So there's a lot of ways that you can actually just use this to expand on the ideas already in Dungeons of Drakenheim.
Yeah, or if you want to do like how our stream campaign has progressed, where characters like the Divine Matriarch and Uriel Radley and Venus Joplin, the High King of Caspia, get involved, because we have the legendary NPCs in the book now, they'll come along with their entourages, and so you could expand the original campaign, but of course you don't have to. Like, ultimately, with Sebastian Crowe's Guide to Drakenheim, if you just want to use the new player material in your existing 5th edition games and not even run it in the world of Drakenheim, you can. And if you want to run Dungeons of Drakenheim and then, or run a campaign that is set in some other part of the world of Drakenheim, you'll be able to do that with the material in this book.
Do you have a favorite apothecary subclass?
You know what? I have a real soft spot for the Reanimator.
I know you do.
Yeah, there's something about like I love. First of all, the source material I love, because both Frankenstein and Herbert West Reanimator are two of my favorite like early science fiction sort of stories, and just like the idea of raising the dead in that way, like it's such a different spin on the necromancer concept, of having like that scientist that is trying to do like, behold Lazarus sort of thing, right? Instead of like, rise my undead minions. It's a different idea.
My favorite thing about the Reanimator is actually, as we detailed it, I definitely was thinking of Frankenstein or Herbert West. But after we finished it, I realized that it matched my old Diablo 2 Necromancer playstyle. Because as the Necromancer in Diablo 2, you could have all your minions, but most of us, maybe not most of us, maybe just me, love doing the Blood Golem. And you just had the Blood Golem do all of your attacking while you stood back and threw spells. And I feel like I was like, oh man, that's the Reanimator. For myself, though, it's a weird choice, and it's the Exorcist.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I landed there because The Exorcist was the least interesting to me when we were starting to develop, and I think that's why it's my favorite. Because it was the last one that I put effort into. We were working on all the rest, and then The Exorcist was left hanging, and I remember Monty being like, I don't know what we're doing with this. Should we just scrap it? I was like, don't scrap it yet. Let's think. And what we ended up landing on was something that felt really cool and really unique, and I think filled a really cool niche of sort of the character that can go in with their briefcase and like, oh, this person's possessed, and like lay out all of the, I don't know, there's a really cool vibe there, and I played it in playtesting and just fell in love with it.
Yeah. Okay. Dr. PJ has an interesting question. How would you rank the countries of the Drakenheim continent before the military struck military-wise? And how powerful was the city of Drakkenheim? How did the other cities view Drakenheim? There's no doubt, it's well known, that if the Caspians were able to set aside all their differences, and if they could all work together, undoubtedly the combined might of the noble houses of Caspia is a military force that would easily conquer the world. I think if they all work together, but they're never going to do that.
Not never. What's beautiful is in the history of the world, Caspia is always fighting amongst themselves until an invader tries to take over, and then Caspia suddenly goes, whoa, 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 we're having our own bickering match. You're not welcome. And then they unite, destroy their enemy, and then go back to fighting amongst themselves. So in those brief moments where they do unite, nobody's been able to mess with Caspia.
Yeah. I would say, in the most conventional sense, Illyria can probably muster the strongest individual military to fight on a united level. Illyria also has the largest naval force as well. At various points in history, Drakenheim and Westamar has had the most powerful military. So during the formation of Westamar by Vladimir von Draken, his army was absolutely the most powerful army in the world. And he would have conquered the world and ruled it as a tyrant if he had not been betrayed and murdered. Although that notion, the history is actually quite kind to Vladimir von Draken, despite the bloody atrocities that he actually committed in his conquest. Today, I think the nation of Westamar, even before the meteor hit, probably had the weakest military.
I think after the fall of House von Draken, which, like, again, Vladimir von Draken's son or grandson?
It would have been his great-great-great-great-great-grandson.
Attempted to relive the glory of the von Draken days, and of course made the mistake of going into Caspia.
Yeah.
And that ended
and that
the
was
von
the
Draken
end of
line.
Von Drakens.
Yeah.
And Westamar also has just been devastated by its own civil war. You got to remember that amongst all the nations, they have a roughly feudal military structure that they use. So typically, the military relies on individual lords at lower levels and individual rulers at local levels recruiting and building up their own household armies, and then those armies being called by their liege lords in the event of wars. And there are wars that break out within the individual nations between the individual houses that sometimes the monarch steps away from. So, like, houses of Caspia have gone to war with each other more than they go to war with anyone else. And there have been, of course, civil wars in Westamar and conflicts in Illyria.
I got a couple questions here that I want to answer. First one is from Caleb Williams. Are there any ways to become a Mageborn if you are not born with it, and what causes the Mageborn gene in mortals? Your answer is warlocks. Yeah. If you are not born with the Mageborn trait, you can choose to be you can choose to be a warlock, but that even requires effort. You're going to have to find an entity to make a pact with. And it is suggested in the book that one of the theories of how magic came to be in our realm is that long, long ago, some humans made some pacts with some otherworldly entities to deal with some major problems that were happening. And thus their bloodlines were tainted by the magical curse. This created things like tieflings if they made deals with demons or devils, or perhaps it made dragonborn when they made deals with dragons. And those pacts created several of the semi-human races and also caused the first mageborn genes to appear. So warlocks are an interesting case in our world because Wrath is actually the perfect example of somebody who was born without mageborn genes and was like, I don't want to be not mageborn, and so sought out a way to gain magic.
So there really is no secret to it. It is just become a warlock. And certainly throughout history, those who have sought to increase the number of magical people under their disposal have made more warlock pacts. But the thing is an eldritch entity that is capable of making a warlock pact just doesn't give out their power to just anybody. And part of this, and from like an under the hood perspective, one of my design goals with the world of Drakenheim, philosophically speaking, was that magic is something rare and special in this world. Because you do need to find the ways of becoming a spellcaster require either some sort of lineage behind you or some sort of appeal to another power, like channeling divine power or gaining a warlock pact, or maybe even more mysterious ways. And this is corollary to the fact that the mortals who inhabit the world of Drakkenheim don't know how magic really works. These are still mysteries to them. They don't really have a very good understanding of planar cosmology. They don't have a good understanding of how divinity works. They don't have a very good understanding of exactly where magic comes from. And for me, having these mysteries alive in the world and having these mysteries be something that are unsolved create exciting storytelling opportunities and exciting conflicts. And they also do this really great thing where they create ambiguity through which you can make a character. So if you want to have a character that's an exception to the rules, you can be a special case with that because you are the protagonist in the story. Your player character is a protagonist. So by having things be mysterious in a little bit of a way, it gives us this power to tell more stories in the setting, and break rules where we want to with this. I also feel that, just from my perspective, there's a tendency in role-playing game worlds, especially those in the sort of the genealogy of 5th edition, to assume that like all fantasy worlds that use a D&D rule set will eventually become Eberron. Drakenheim will never be a world like Eberron. I love Eberron. It's my favorite published setting. But I wanted to make a setting in Drakenheim that was almost a bit of an anti-Eberron. In that I love the politics of the Eberron world. I love the place of magic. But I really wanted to make it more of a dark and gritty sort of world rather than like the noir sort of feeling that Eberron has. So that definitely, like, Eberron is probably one of the settings that Drakenheim is one of the biggest reaction to in that way. I love it. It's, again, favorite setting. Hands down, Eberron, any day. Keith Baker, please. I'd love to hang out with you sometime. But I don't want Drakenheim to turn into an Eberron sort of setting. The magic of the world is that the magic is mysterious.
And actually, speaking of that, Kevin Cassidy asks, what can you say about the implementation of new races like Plasmoids or Haduzi in the world of Drakenheim? And what I'm going to tell you right now is you're not going to see them in our streams. We're not going to talk about them. That doesn't mean that you can't play one. I actually saw a great little story. I don't know who it was. Somebody on our Discord was talking about how one of their players is going to be playing the Plasmoid race, and they're a sentient pile of goo that got delirium in it. And I'm
Awesome.
like, you know
Sure.
what? Sure, great. That's
it.
wild. If your player characters have an idea on how they want to bring these races to life, work with your DM, work with your players, figure out what's going to work for your setting. The way that we want to depict Drakenheim in the books and in our live stream is that it's a very human world and really human adjacent, like elves, dwarves, halflings. Those sort of like standard fantasy races are there, but it's 90% human. And the further you get away from that core, the less likely it is that we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, we don't want Drakenheim to, in the same sense that like we don't want Drakenheim to be a kitchen sink setting. You know what I mean? Like I don't feel the pressure to try to find a way to include absolutely everything in the world of Drakenheim. But that's just me as one of the creators of this world. What we have done and what's really important to us is that again we create that space where if you and your group want to play Githyanki, Plasmoids, Minotaurs, Leonin, Owlin, if you want to bring in all the whole range of diverse and anthropomorphic and sometimes downright weird character ancestries to use in your Drakenheim campaign, go for it. It's more important that you and your players play the game that you want to play, that you're going to enjoy, play the characters that speak to you, than you preserve the sanctity of the Drakenheim setting at your own game table. So it's like, the answer to the question basically boils down to, are you guys going to write more things about all these other different origins and ancestries for characters in the world of Drakenheim? No. We're going to focus on humans and those of mixed human ancestry for developing further in the setting. But does that mean that your player can't play one, that you can't work with your player? No. And in fact, in Sebastian Crowe's Guide to Drakenheim, we have this sidebar where we're like, do you want to play something from that we haven't described here? Here's a bunch of advice on how you can do that and ways that you can make that make sense within the setting and that are applicable to almost anything, I think.
Yeah, one of the goals is in Sebastian Crowe's is we do have a section on the various people of the world. We do detail how the people that we see inhabiting the world, how they fit in, but then we kind of have a section at the bottom that's just like there are other types of people too, and we leave that relatively wide open. So if you're looking for your bit of history on how do dwarves fit in, elves, halflings, gnomes, all of those are detailed. Dragonborn, tiefling, I'm missing a few, but there's actually quite a few that are detailed. And then we also have the other section. That's for everybody else. You want to make something? Go ahead and make it.
Yep.
What else do we got?
There is questions.
A lot of questions. We're doing our best.
Okay.
Will Monty be playing the monk during playtesting?
Really? Yeah, I should.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
Any ideas on where you are going next once Fate is done? We have a few ideas.
Should I lay it out? Can I be honest with something?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So we're probably going to do this. Once Fate of Drakenheim ends, we're probably going to do more Untold Tales of Drakenheim to resolve plot threads. I kind of have this very early idea that once Fate of Drakenheim is over, we might do some one-shot or two-shots. My tentative working title, I haven't even told you this yet.
No, I'm hearing this for the first time.
My tentative working title is either Dirge of Drakenheim or Requiem of Drakenheim. And we can do some one or two shots to resolve any of the loose ends that we need to resolve. Like, if by the end of Fate of Drakenheim we haven't figured out... Okay, like, in the off chance we haven't worked out any of the important elements of Sebastian's backstory, I think that we would do, like, you know, Requiem of Drakenheim or Dirge, or like, what's the other word for, like the funeral anthem? It is usually Requiem, but and Dirge are the two. Those are the two sort of terms that are floating in my head right now. Maybe we'll go for something different later.
But we are also going to resolve Sebastian.
We are going to
during Fate of Drakenheim.
But if we didn't, we would do that, and I think we would do more Untold Tales and stuff like that. Elegy for Drakenheim. I like that.
Thanks,
Elegy,
Benjamin.
Yeah. That like that one a lot. So with that sort of with that in mind, I think probably not to speak too soon, we'll see what happens for the game itself before we start another stream, like a new story.
Yeah. I also know that Monty and I have already had some sit down discussions on expanding the world. One of the beautiful things that happened with this book, Sebastian Crowe's Guide to Drakenheim, really allowed us to lay a foundation that wasn't there before on the wider world of Drakenheim. And now that that foundation's there, Monty and I are kind of excited about alternate stories that we could tell in this world.
Yeah.
What I do think should happen is that once we're done Fate of Drakenheim, the Westamar Crown / Delirium dilemma needs to be set aside. Could Delirium still show up? I think that Contamination and Delirium are a cool mechanic, but the question, what are we going to do with Delirium, with the Meteor, and with the Crown of Westamar? Those are done after Fate of Drakenheim. New questions and new locations and new types of people going to new places does interest me because of what we've written in this book.
Yeah, I think there's a very big possibility that we might go to another continent.
Monty and I, okay, I don't want to say too much.
Yeah.
Monty and I have, for over a year now, had ideas on things that are going on another continent. We have hinted at them here and there if you're paying very close attention to our live streams, and if you pay very close attention in the book, there are nods and whispers that might allude to things that are happening elsewhere in the world, and we're interested in maybe exploring that in a future campaign. That way we remove ourselves from Westamar, Delirium, all of that. We get to look elsewhere in the world, tell brand new stories, but keep it as part of the same overall world.
And then we can get the references sneaking back in. So, and then maybe we'll see. Like, I think, there's always the question of, like, we have big dreams of, like, what we want to do with the channel and with all of our work. Like, how can we improve our live streams, our studio, our video content, and everything like that. And so that'll all be part of that conversation and what we want to do next for a writing project or anything like that too. So all that's on the table. We haven't made any final decisions yet on what we want to do next. I think that, there's another big thing of that Kelly and I have definitely talked about, is that, like, burnout can be a real thing. And we definitely want to do more social stuff too, like going to cons again, promoting the books that we've done so far, making more great content on YouTube, doing more streams. We've talked about this before, of also how we really want to play some more role-playing games. And so in October, Kelly and I are going to do some Call of Cthulhu short plays, and then we might do some other stuff with some other games as well, maybe with new friends too.
I saw Ashlyn wrote, "What about Kelly's need for sci-fi?" And that is definitely something that's on the talking block.
I would love to do a sci-fi setting.
I have Mothership coming in, and I already have a name for it.
Really?
I have a name, and I have a loose theme.
Keep it secret.
And I'm not going to... Don't ask me 3 times on the Discord. Don't do it.
Yeah.
I might tell you.
Yeah. But yeah, a sci-fi story would be super cool. And also, like, for me with COC, I'm really interested in, like, a modern story or something that is in like the 20th century. So that's super fun. Tio, yeah, I know. Plot twist, let's turn Eberron into Drakkenheim by using Contamination and Delirium in the Mournland. And because, of course, Eberron's Mournland, magical disaster, like, huge inspiration for Drakkenheim in general. Like, I love the idea of, like, the world being turned upside down by a magical cataclysm, and Eberron has so much of that in it. I think, I don't know if I'm... I think I saw someone, maybe in our Discord or maybe talking about how, I think the city in the Mournland is Metrol. Metrol? And I think I've seen people talking about, what if you turned set like use the Drakkenheim stuff in Metral and Eberron. That would be super cool. That would be a super cool hack of the whole thing. You could do a lot of different things in that way, right? Once again, invite Keith Baker, says Dyson Doggos. Yeah, maybe we should reach out to Keith.
I mean, there's a lot of people I want to reach out to. Are there rules for setting a story in the past of Drakenheim? Not that we've written, but you can use the rules that are there and tell your own story in the past of Drakenheim. But we get this question a lot. I even saw another question in here that was similar about what if you did a flashback to the Age of Sorcerer Kings? We like the conflicts that we've talked about being the backdrop. We like this whole, like, it's the foundation for the stories we're telling. But we're actually less interested. I think that the Sorcerer Kings is a cool place for anybody to set a campaign in. But it's not a story that we like it being what it is. It's the history of our world.
Yeah, the Sorcerer Kings are such a like it's very easy to think, oh, are the Sorcerer Kings going to come back? Are they the real villains behind everything? And I think that the fear in the world is not that the original Sorcerer Kings are going to come back. It's that a new person could be like, actually, they had a lot of good ideas. I think I would like to be a Sorcerer King. And I think for me, that's the story that interests me a little bit more in that respect. Yeah, right. I always like to bring things back to the present whenever I possibly can.
People are now bugging me about the name of my sci-fi.
Ooh, oh, they're gonna.
I know, and I'm gonna tell them at some point.
Terry S wants to know: would we ever consider running an occasional one-shot for patrons? We definitely want to do charity events where we can run games for fans. Unfortunately, the math of doing that, because we have a wonderful Patreon community and we've thought about how we could do this, and it either boils down to this. We would either have to do some sort of lottery or raffle or something like that, which would make the chances of getting into that one shot very small, or we would have to gate it by putting on a very prohibitive price. I don't like either of those things very much. So we might look to some other types of events, and I don't like doing either of those things, except when there's like either if we were going to do something that was very, very special, like at a convention, or something that was very, very special, like for charity. But I don't think that I would want to do a paid game for people online. I just think that would be a real challenge to actually pull that off logistically.
Monty and I have been having a lot of conversations about ways that we can engage with our fans at conventions and doing more conventions, more places in the world. And, that's something that I think we would look at. But running online games, there's a lot of people that want to play with us, and we don't want to do 10-person tables.
Yeah.
We don't want to do 100-person tables.
And we can't. And as much as I would love the idea of playing D&D with everybody, the reality of that is that I think to play D&D with, if we said, okay, right now we have 8,600 backers backing our Sebastian Crow's Guide to Drakenheim. Do the math. Divide that by 4 players per table. How many games of D&D would you need to run a game of D&D for every backer? It'd be a lot. I think it'd take you years to do that if you're playing, even if you're playing every day, right? So I would, in a fantasy world where I could stop time, I would love to play a game of D&D with every single one of our patrons and backers. It's the logistics that make it impossissible. So
I'm sorry, I gotta eat.
Gotta
eat, guys.
Yeah. Well, we can eat while we're playing D&D.
I mean, true, I do eat a lot when I'm playing D&D. Fine, I have to sleep. I do have to sleep occasionally, sometimes.
Yeah.
I know it sucks. I wish I didn't. If I could have 24 hours a day to just do everything, cool.
Andrew N wants to know, is there a complete document of the Edicts of Lumen included in either Kickstarter? The complete Edicts of Lumen are a Byzantine document, hundreds of pages long. However, in Sebastian Crow's Guide to Drakenheim, we have basically a summary of the 6 main articles of the Edicts of Lumen, which includes a quote from the beginning of that article that basically lays out the main tenets of the Edicts of Lumen. the entirety of the document in the lore of the universe is this gigantic, huge document. But the basic points are all laid out for you with a little bit of excerpt sort of feeling stuff.
We're getting close. Just to update, we're at 989.
Ooh,
It's getting there. We're gonna see.
getting there. It's getting
Can
there.
we hit it while we're live on stream? Let's find
Maybe
out.
we'll find out. We'll find out.
Everybody, tell your friends. We're doing that phone thing. Get on the phones. Call us now. Donate. I don't know.
Call your mom.
Yeah. I love this. Edicts TLDR.
Yeah, basically.
That's what you're going to find in this
yeah.
book. If you want us to write the entire Edicts of Lumen, I mean, I'm not even going to joke. Like, no, I don't feel like writing the Bible.
I feel like I would need to hire a lawyer to help me with that.
Yeah. It's also like sorry, I said the Bible, but that's more like people have asked, like, is the text of the Sacred Flame? And it's like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, it's like a lawyer and a priest walk into a bar. A lawyer, a priest, and a wizard walk into a bar. They walk out with the Edicts of Lumen.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, none of the full texts detailed in the world are in this book because they would be bigger books on their own.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and by a similar token, like, I would love to explore the full text of things like the holy text of the Sacred Flame and the Testament of the Falling Fire and the Edicts of Lumen. Like, it's really cool because those are the three people ask us for. I want the full text of Edicts, the Testament, and the holy text of the Sacred Flame. And I would love to build out and write all of those things. It would be a lot of fun as a writer's project, but it's such a lore deep dive, right? Even for myself, even writing all that stuff, like, I think that I think the one that would be the most fun would probably be the holy text of the Sacred Flame, because I would write that like parables and short stories in the same way as many of the books of the Bible are written from the form of and many other holy texts in general, not just the Bible. The Bible's not the only example of this in human history or human society, where a holy book is a moral story, is a collection of moral stories, right?
Yeah.
You know.
Two questions that I'm seeing popping up a few times, so I'm going to answer them. Bamarag asks, what caused the delirium problem in the first place? A meteor hit Drakkenheim.
Where the meteor came from and where delirium comes from as well. I'm not going to spoil it on the stream, but we were very open about that in the Dungeons of Drakenheim book. So and we actually communicate our intent with what that is. So if you flip over to the Origins of the Meteor chapter in Dungeons of Drakenheim, you can read that and read where it comes from and talks about kind of our philosophy behind that, because there is an answer to that question, but there also is not an answer to that question.
Yeah, it's not an answer, but it is an answer. But really, the start of it in our world was that a meteor hit the capital city of Westamar, Drakkenheim. Yeah. The origin of it in general, that's to be discovered. The other question that we're getting a lot is, why are we still playing virtually? So I don't want to give away everybody's personal life, but if you don't know, Jill and Joe in the last few years have both had children. There was a global pandemic. There were issues about getting their children vaccinated. There is also the fact that a lot of job switching happened. A lot of moving happened.
Yeah.
A lot of people just getting their lives sorted out. And we are talking about returning to the basement. But we wanted Joe and Jill to have as much time as they needed to get situated in their new homes, to get situated with their new children, to have the time they needed with their partners.
Yeah.
And it's much easier for them to be able to pop into their computer room for Drakenheim than it is to come to Monty's. We are all excited to get back to the basement. We're going to be looking at the logistics of that hopefully before the end of the year. But it's really just about making sure that everybody's comfortable and happy. We're not forcing anybody to do anything, and giving everybody the space and time that they need to do what they got to do to be happy and comfortable in their lives.
Freight Train asked, what was the hardest subclass to design for the book, and why was it the monk? It wasn't the monk. The monk was like the easiest one.
Oh,
I
we had
think
a
it was.
blast
We had a
making the
blast
monk.
making those monks, right? Because there was so much to react to. With those. Those were not. What was the hardest? I think the Circle of Contamination Druid was hard. I think it was that.
That one
the
was
last
left
one.
hanging for a while. The druid.
The druid. I think.
Oddly, the fighter went through like 20
Yeah.
more renditions. I think happened with the fighter than almost any other subclass. Where like you and I had two different ideas, and then we mixed and matched those ideas together like 30 different ways, and then we landed on it. But yeah, I think the druid and the fighter, oddly, were the two ones that we had the hardest time with.
Yeah. Yep. And I do think that the Malfeasant Wizard, I knew what we want. I think all the contaminated subclasses, I think they were the last ones that we finished.
Yeah, they actually, it was hard to nail what we wanted to do with the
Yeah.
contaminated subclasses, to have them play with the contamination mechanics, but not break a Drakkenheim game.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so David Morgan wants to know, is there the edicts prohibit Mageborn from holding a noble title, but is there also a separation of powers between the church and the nobility? Can a noble legally be a divine caster or a member of the clergy? So strictly speaking, the clergy of the Faith of the Sacred Flame, as part of becoming either a flamekeeper or a paladin, they take vows of poverty and chastity. Your player characters don't have to do that. But the in-universe, the formal hierarchy of the faith, they renounce all of their property and take vows of poverty, and they renounce having relationships as well. So, you know, that's the way that they handle things. But your player characters who are clerics and paladins, even clerics and paladins of the Sacred Flame, don't need to have taken those vows if they don't want to. But that point was used during the edicts when they were negotiated. The topic of, do we need to have a formal line in here to prohibit them, was brought up. And the thing that I like to say is that, like, there are many real-world documents that were written 300 years ago, like the Edicts of Lumen was also written 300 years ago. And sometimes the people who wrote things 300 years ago didn't necessarily think about how things are going to be different in 300 years. And maybe we shouldn't really be super devoted to documents that were written 300 years ago without necessarily considering the ways that they might be changed. But some people are really passionate about those 300-year-old documents and don't want them to be changed at all. And if trying to change them seems like it would incite a lot of conflict, maybe violent ones as well. So, you know, it's a bit of a cautionary tale about the loopholes of 300-year-old documents. Yeah.
Anyway, okay. Refocus. Will the map packs from Sebastian Crowe's Guide to Drakenheim be available for PDF like the ones from Dungeons of Drakenheim? Yes. Yes. Yeah. They're part of the.
I'm pretty sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say yes. If I'm wrong, I'm so sorry, but I'm like pretty sure we had this conversation with Ghostfire, and they're not here right now to tell me if I'm saying the wrong thing, but I'm gonna say yes. What was your favorite and not so favorite parts of this entire process? My favorite part of this entire process was coming up with things. I actually equally loved. It was two very different positive emotions. Creating subclasses in the brand new class filled me with like so much excitement. But then when I got, at first, I actually remember this. This was a beautiful moment in the process. At first, when we moved over to the Continental Gazetteer, and I started being like, all right, time to write some history of our world, and I didn't know what to do. I started writing just random documents of nonsense and passing them off to Monty. And it was actually there was a day that I came over, and you were like, Kelly, I made a map. And not like a physical map, like a map of where we would.
The map was the best. Doing the
slotting
map,
in titles, like Monty had detailed, like, well, all we need to do now is write in each section, and he mapped out basically where the words were going to go.
The best moment, though, was when we were looking at the map of the continent, and we're like, I don't think this part of the world is part of Caspia. This isn't part of Illyria, and this part of... Like, it was just like the world just opened up. And I have to say that for me, the best part, like this was the best part. Like hanging out with my best friend, working on an amazing world. My best platonic broski friend. Credit to my partners, credit to our partners, and everything like that. I think it's worth saying. Love you so much. But it like having an amazing creative collaborator and friend to work with and design fantasy worlds and work on role playing game stuff is the best thing ever.
I'll never forget literally the exact emotion in this basement when we were looking at the map and Monty just like took a red circle, circled the section and went, "This isn't part of Caspia." And I looked at him and went, "What is it?" And he went, "I don't know." And then we both just stared at each other for a moment, and the realization that we had just added a ton of extra work onto our plate, but it became so exciting. It was like, well then this isn't part of Illyria, and this isn't part of the Eastern Vale, and then we suddenly had, I think, like 13 different nations in our continent.
Yeah.
And that was a very exciting moment. The hardest part for me was those moments where I didn't know what to write or where, and I was just kind of fumbling, but Monty and I would always come together and kind of figure it out. So there was a lot of fumbling. There was a lot of like nights where I would write 5,000 words, and then Monty would look at it and be like, "Yeah, this isn't going in the book." And I'm like, oh. And he's like, "Kelly, you just wrote 40 pages on dwarves. We can't have 40 pages on dwarves."
Yeah.
And I'm like, oops. Yeah,
Maybe we will have 40 pages on dwarves one day.
one day.
Yeah.
I think I saw another question. I've lost it now, but there was another question that was like, "What are you most regretful didn't make it into the book?" And I'm not
40 pages of dwarves.
I'm not regretful on anything, but Monty and I both had you had a long-winded section on the religion and magic.
I did, and it really got cut down. Yeah.
And I had a long-winded section on the various people of the world that got incredibly cut down. Am I regretful that they didn't make it in? No, it's probably better that we made it more precise. But in the future, I'm sure that if people wanted it bad enough, we could do an entire book on like the Sacred Flame or an entire book on dwarves in our setting.
Yeah, I think that there's so much room that we can grow with this world and other worlds as well. So we'll see where that all finds its way to manifest.
Since we are here talking about the Kickstarter and hoping to hit $1 million before it closes, I am going to answer this question from Jenny. How do I pay now for add-ons to help get to $1 million? For everybody listening out there and everybody who has backed the project, it has been confirmed that if you go into manage your pledge, there's an option to add additional funds to your pledge. Those additional funds will be added as credit when Backer Kit gets sent out. So when you receive Backer Kit, which is where you're going to choose all your add-ons, if you added $100 extra to your pledge, you'll have $100 to just click on the add-ons you want, and it's going to subtract $100 from whatever else you get. Monty and I just upped our pledges because we want a few add-ons too.
Yeah, because I want... Like,
I want more minis.
I want more minis.
So I added to my pledge. So for everybody out there being like, how can we help you hit $1 million? We've already pledged, and you're looking at add-ons, you can add that money now to help hit $1 million, and you'll get that.
Joe S. has asked a question a few times. Will there be 3D printable models, STL files for the minis? That is something that we've been asked several times. We're very interested in that as a possibility. For this time around, for this Kickstarter project, doesn't look like it. But we're hoping to find other options for that in the future. There's just a lot to figure out when it comes to jumping into the realm of distributing STL files. And so working with our project partners, our sculptors, our manufacturers, our product designers, and the team at Ghostfire Gaming, we just have to figure out what that would look like on kind of the business side of things. Not to get too much into that, but that's basically the hold up behind it. We just need to figure out how is it all going to get distributed, if there's any infrastructure around that, and do a little bit more research and decide the right way to give those files out, because there's a lot of different ways to do 3D printing stuff like that, and we want to make sure that if we do decide to dip our toes in with that we're doing it in the right way, both on our end and for all of you out there.
There's a couple questions here that I really like. First of all, where was it? Oh, I lost it. Where did I lose it? Okay, I'll just go to the other one. What was your inspiration for having the contamination mechanic? This is from Game Master Evan. And having delirium function the way it does.
Radiation and Fallout.
Yep. Monty and I are both huge fans of the Fallout series. Yeah. And we love, like, I don't know if you've ever been playing Fallout, and, like, things are fine. You have your radiation kits. You have your, like, anti-rad, whatever.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you, like, fall into you like, walk down the wrong corner in Fallout, and there's so many barrels, and suddenly there's super mutants. And you're watching your radiation just go boop, 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 as you're trying to get out. It's horrifying. It's so horrifying. And, you know, when you look at Fallout, there are really a lot of comparisons there of, like, radiation, the radiated center of the city, the super mutants.
But, I mean, like, magic space rocks that mutate people is a fantasy staple.
It's everywhere.
It is. Like, it's in everything from Warhammer to... Kryptonite often does it too.
Yeah.
I was a super... Remember Smallville?
I loved most of Smallville.
Smallville had a Monster of the Week format where it was like, this is what Kryptonite's done this time. And so that's kind of part of the other reason of having a magic space rock that has unclear properties and chaotic properties is that when you have a space rock, you can basically say, this monster is the product of space rock. And it gives you kind of this narrative framework that it's, like, easy to explain why there's a monster or crazy weird things happening without having to think about it too hard.
Yeah, and it's not only that it gives you a way to just, like, answer so many questions, but it's also just a trope that we both love. It's like a classic trope. Like, I grew up with Color Out of Space from H.P. Lovecraft, and actually, this is a weird one. One of my favorite childhood movies, and it's probably not one that a child should watch every weekend, but I rented the movie The Blob every weekend. Oh,
weird.
Where a meteor lands and a weird creature comes out of it and eats people.
Yeah.
And I loved horror movies.
You know, the other thing that I also had a lot of inspiration for, and again, credit to Keith Baker, dragon shards from Eberron are magic rocks. Right? And some of those magic rocks come from space because there is a ring of dragon shards that is around that world, right? So, like, as soon as you start to, like, go out into the world of fiction and start looking for, like, meteor brings strange thing to the planet and starts mutating people, it becomes a little bit kind of embarrassingly common.
Yeah. And so, like, when people are like, your idea is not original, it's like, nobody that's used this idea is original. I wonder who the first person to ever be like, meteor space rock contaminates people.
Well,
I don't know who that was.
No, there used to be, I think there was this idea, it goes back to, like, Star Metal. Like, because I'm trying to think of what the myth is and exactly where it originates, but, like, this idea that, like, a meteor brings iron, and then you make a sword out of it. And I think it has, like, a real world origin in the fact that for very early people, meteoric iron, so iron that came from a meteor, was some of the easiest iron to find. Because
and it sounds cool.
Meteoric iron. It sounds. There's actually, I'm trying to remember the author. It's the Skystone trilogy, where it's this very one of my favorite books as well. The Skystone trilogy, which is a very, like, what if Arthurian legend originated in Rome and Britain sort of story, and that story includes a Skystone where there's a meteor that falls down, and that's kind of like Excalibur was made out of the metal from a meteor. And I'm not sure if that's actually, like, part of, like, the real Arthurian legend at all, or whether it's, like, watery tarts distributing swords.
I was going to make the joke. You made the joke.
But the idea that, like, meteors bring unknown material that human beings use and that it brings corrupted power, it's older than dirt, right? And so I can't, like, claim credit or originality for the idea of it. It's just that everyone finds new ways to riff on new ideas. If we didn't riff on ideas and iterate on new ideas and get inspiration from other things, then we would just have the same, like, I don't know what we would create. No one creates in a vacuum. I mean, you know, look if you look at any individual work of William Shakespeare, you can find the genealogy of where Shakespeare borrowed those ideas from as well. Right?
And I mean, I'm nothing if not just an amalgamation of every horror trope that I've ever consumed. I say so all the time. Video games, movies, books. I love the horror genre, and if you are reading Drakenheim and you're like, there's a lot of horror tropes in here. Yeah, that's on purpose.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Let's answer more questions. Oh, there's a big spoiler. Sorry, I'm not going to read that one out for people who don't have the book. For those of you who are wondering, this is the Duchess movie.
Oh, yeah.
Here.
So good, right? Like, yeah, I'm very intimidated.
I am very excited to paint it.
We were going to possibly paint these tonight, but unfortunately, my airbrush was not cooperative and I couldn't prime them. So that was the main issue there. Someone forgot to clean his airbrush.
Was it me? No.
No, it was me. Because unfortunately in Toronto it's often very humid. So if you use rattle can primer to prime miniatures, so like a spray can primer, the humidity can cause gunk to build up on the mini and you don't get a smooth finish. But using an airbrush helps mitigate that. So I prime most of my miniatures with an airbrush. I forgot to clean my airbrush the last time I used it, and so now I have to do a much more intense process. I might just throw it out and buy a new one. That'll be like, I'm really bad at cleaning airbrushes, and I've gone through 4.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah.
Just clean them.
I know. Actually, to be fair, I dropped one of them and broke it. So, to be fair, I've only not cleaned 2 airbrushes. I'm on airbrush number 4, which hopefully I can clean this one out.
Any subclass that didn't make it in the final version?
We thought about doing an Oath of the Sacred Flame Paladin.
I think the ones that didn't make the book we were going to do... So originally there was going to be a Caspian fighter, but that got amalgamated
to be more neutral.
Yeah, we decided that why limit the options? So the fighter that you find in the book is a rendition. We were going to do like a Caspian fighter and an Illyrian, a Silver Order paladin, a Sacred Flame cleric, and a Old Gods druid.
Yeah, but and I think we were going to do a Falling Fire cleric.
A Falling Fire cleric. Yeah. But all of those felt like there was actually nothing new to give them.
My first draft of the Sacred Flame domain basically looked like someone wrote down their favorite parts of the life domain and the light domain. Yeah. And I was kind of like it was hard to like be like, because it was hard to make it something that wasn't just generic cleric, and like the vibe that I want for Flamekeepers is kind of generic cleric. So that was the real struggle there. Same with doing the Oath of the Sacred Flame, was that Sacred Flame is meant to just be generic paladin, generic cleric. So it was hard to like iterate on that in a way that I guess we could have done a paladin with more fire powers, because I guess there hasn't really like a paladin that gets more fire magic instead of radiant. But like one of the design directions that we've kind of taken with the Sacred Flame is that it's still more radiant than fire.
Yeah, and I do think that like when we looked at the Circle of the Old Gods druid, again, we felt like all the druids, each one that we didn't do, it felt like the ones that are already in existence, you could easily tailor to fit those niches. So like, if you're playing a light or life domain cleric, you can be from the Sacred Flame and you're filling the role. If you play which paladin? I think any paladin really can fit the role. If you're playing any druid, you can say what old god you're worshipping and you're good to go. So a lot of times we had to... with the fighter, we just did a commander fighter. because the commander fighter can be the leader of any military organization in our world. So we actually, originally we wanted to be super specific so that when you see the subclass, you go, oh, this is so Drakkenheim. But we found that being less specific meant that you as a player get to then choose how that character gets fit into the narrative that you want to tell.
Yeah, and so within that, though, again, you always have the options. Player character can always be the exception. That's the rule of. I think I was talking on the Ghostfire Discord with that, and I said I actually want to have a rule called the protagonist rule. I don't. Maybe someone's got to have worked this out already. Like, there's got to be someone that's written about this already. That says, like, in fantasy stories, the rule of thumb is that the rules don't apply to the protagonist. Like, the rules of the world and the protagonist always gets to be the exception. The player characters get to be the exception. I might have to just look that up a little bit more and see if someone said that. Yeah.
Verzin87 reposted their question, so I'm going to look at it here. Are there any details on other notable groups from the Civil War, like the Ochtenwald Irregulars, major werewolves, vampires, or other horror movie monster groups? Perhaps Mummy?
Vampires and werewolves definitely have some things. We've got the Steelfang Regiment.
And we do talk about
vampires in Westamar.
And there's more lore than you got in the show. Because somebody went ahead and killed the vampires before we were able to say anything.
Might have a little bit more there.
So you do get more lore on... I think the Ochtenwald Irregulars are mentioned, but definitely we do have a detailed history of the Civil War.
Yeah.
Who took part in it, what was going on.
We also detail several noble houses, so you get more lore about the von Badens, the von Fritzes, the von Kleinkessel, the House Kleinkessel, and snippets of lore about some other noble houses as well. We couldn't do every noble house in Westamar because there's a lot of them.
There's a lot. We did the main ones, the important ones.
Yeah. So I think every nation has at least 3 noble houses that are discussed in detail, except for Caspia, which has 6 because it has the 6 great houses. And then Illyria and Westamar, instead of having 6 noble houses detailed for them, they have other factions that are at play in those regions that are also detailed. So you get a little bit of a mix and match. Caspia is all about the 6 great houses. Yeah.
What was great though is the book really feeds into itself. That you get talk on why these people are important, who these people are. You get descriptions of the main players in each of those groups. You also get descriptions of their cities or towns or where they reside. One of my favorite, I loved writing Todsfeld.
Yeah.
It was one that just wrote itself. Monty had obviously laid out a ton of groundwork. He had the dam, the Castle Sodden, and he was like, can you fill out some of the details about the other bits of the town? And I remember just writing, and I was like, there's a church. The church is on a mound of dirt surrounded by contaminated water. And then I was like, the church is surrounded by contaminated water. The basement of the church is flooded with contaminated
and then
water.
Had the plot hooks. Yeah,
and I was like, oh God, this place is terrible. And I just it wrote itself after that. That was one of my favorite writing moments where I was like, the church in Todsfeld. And then I was like, my hands just kept writing and I just wrote some stuff. And I was like, wow.
Yeah. So there's a very good question from down over here from Marcio B asking, will there be info on each of the town cities of Westamar, such as Helig and Glothfen? Many of them, but not all of them. We really had to dial things back because when we submitted the manuscript, Phil, who is the head of RPGs at Ghostfire Gaming, is like, guys, even if we hit every single stretch goal, we're still 5,000 words over the maximum we can book.
Yeah.
And so we did have to do some we had a couple kill your darlings moments. And so and that's part of the reason why the 900k stretch goal was the adventure. And why those are in a PDF form instead of being in the book. Because they were over the scope of the book. The adventures got long too. The adventures started to get too long.
They
as well.
cutting them out and making them PDFs also was twofold reasons for that. Number one, it was the easiest way to free up a ton of space in the book so that we could finish writing out the rest of the places. Number two, it is a player book, and having the adventures in there, they were the most spoiler. And removing them and just saying, DMs, you can grab these, really helps with the book being able to be read by players.
Cool.
Can magical curses, ailments, and conditions affect a Mageborn's magic or the chance of being born Mageborn?
Yes.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, totally. Why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
Is that a good enough answer?
Yeah.
I think it could.
Yeah, I just think that there's never going to be anything that is easily reproduced. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I think that, like,
magic anomalies.
Just because
everywhere.
It's like, I was born a Mageborn because while I was growing up, my daddy got Bestow Curse cast on him or something like that.
Yeah.
Sure, that works for your player character, but, like, no one's going to go around casting Bestow Curse on every parent that is expecting and run into a Mageborn child. You know what I mean?
We are not artificers are not part of the OGL.
Sorry, we should say the question.
Okay, yeah.
Seiji L asks, why did we not create an artificer subclass for the book? Unfortunately, as Kelly was saying,
Artificers are not part of the OGL. This is a document released by Wizards of the Coast that allows third-party creators to create content using the rules associated with 5th edition. We can reference every class that has been released in the core rules. Artificers are not part of that.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, for legal reasons, although we would have loved to create an artificer subclass and talk about how artificers fit into the world, we can't.
Yeah.
And that's just the way that it is.
Maybe the artificer will eventually be released into the OGL, or there might be an expansion of the OGL. We can hope. But until then, we won't be able to do anything officially for the artificer in Drakkenheim. How many pages long is the book likely to be? It's still in layout. The manuscript was 155,000 words.
Yeah, I think it's roughly the same size as Dungeons of Drakenheim.
It's twice the length of my PhD thesis.
And he worked on it for half as long. No. So, it should be roughly the same size as Dungeons of Drakenheim, which is really awesome if you consider that Dungeons of Drakenheim is a lot of adventure sites, which are meaty sections. This book has a lot of lore. A lot of lore. I can't believe how much lore we had. And we were worried at the beginning.
Yeah, I don't know why we were worried.
We thought that we wouldn't be able to hit our word count. I think, you know what it was? Going back to an earlier statement, it was the moment that we started circling places on the map and being like, these aren't the three...
and then it just...
The word count shot up tremendously as soon as we realized that we had more places and people and things to write about.
Yeah.
There is no family tree for the Von Kessel in this book. That is the question. Is there a Von Kessel family tree? There is not. The reason being, our show details one version of the Von Kessel family tree, but we definitely have a lot of suggestions that you as players...
I do have that family tree made, though, and we could talk to Ona and Martin and see if there's room to put it in.
Yeah, but I also, I do like that we tell people,
Yeah, that they can make their own, because we want people to be able to decide what it is. For their characters.
I don't want to give any spoilers, but certain characters that we may or may not play in our show only exist as part of the family tree because players decided that.
Yeah. So it's a catch-22. We want to give you as players and game masters inspiration and something to glom onto, but we don't want to create so much that it's now you can't make the character or run the campaign that you want to make. And doing things like a very, very strictly defined family tree then means you have it makes it feel like you can't now make changes to it. We want you to be able to change it.
Question from Chalberti. Are urban rangers a particular part of the Hooded Lanterns only, or could they be part of other factions?
Any faction that we made them neutral for this reason.
That was the same as some of the other subclasses we talked about. Originally, we were going to call it the Hooded Lantern Ranger, but we decided that that was limiting for players. By calling it the Urban Ranger, you can kind of say, oh, hey, this is definitely a Hooded Lantern, and I'm going to play it that way. You could also be Veo and be the Urban Ranger. You could also be from any city in the world. You could just be like a guerrilla military style combatant in any setting.
Yeah. SWAT officer wants to know, do you think you'll make more minis for generic monsters like the Ratlings, Garmere, mutated creatures, and faction units? I'd love to get a big box of minis for the game. I would love to make all those. I would love to do that, but making minis it's a tricky business to get into. And so it would be super cool to do a whole miniatures range for everything Drakkenheim, but yeah, we got to take it in small batches because it's tricky. We've talked about it.
We have big dreams.
We have big dreams. We would love to do that for sure. But
it's something that we've chatted about. It's something that we have riffed on casually in conversation while we're also talking about having a Drakenheim movie or series or whatever. But these are the things that we talk about over a few beers when we're hoping. But we don't know yet if we're going to be releasing anything. But it's on the table. It's something that we want to talk about.
Andrew N wants to know: is there another continent on your world where other fantastic peoples might live? Yes, there might be. I haven't finished it yet. It's still probably mostly humans. Though this is a human world, and as I said earlier in the stream, I don't really have the urge to make it into a kitchen sink sort of setting. I want it to feel like a very grounded fantasy sort of setting that is where the sort of the facets of humanity reflect against the eldritch terror. Because I feel that when you have the more that it's about humans facing the otherworldly and the unknown, I feel that those themes are very much strongly reinforced. But of course, as we expand the world, we'll create more places for lots of fantastic people to live as.
Here's one that we always get. Question: Ratling race?
Playable Ratlings? We had an idea.
We had an idea
of doing a Ratling adventure where all the player characters have to play Ratling.
So the idea was, if you look at Dungeons of Drakkenheim, our first Kickstarter, there were detailed concepts for if you were joining the Queen of Thieves. She has a list of missions that she's going to send you on. Our rule with the Ratlings is that Ratlings are evil. They are evil, and they eat people, and they are not meant to be good characters. This is a problem that comes up in D&D a lot, is as soon as you take a type of monster and make it playable, does that mean that it's not a monster anymore? And
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And right? We really wanted Ratlings to be monsters. But then we started talking, what if there was a concept where everybody at the table played as a Ratling? And it was a different version of Dungeons of Drakkenheim.
Yeah.
Where the Ratlings, you as a team of Ratlings were playing an evil Drakenheim campaign where your goal is to mess up all of the factions, ruin all of their plans, and eat them.
That'd be fun.
That would be fun.
That would be fun. But we could always experiment more. Let's see. Diago F wants to know, how would you guys think this campaign fits for new D&D players? Any aspect I should forgo till they get used to it? I feel, this is just me personally, I feel that new players benefit strongly from playing a short campaign first before taking on a campaign that's going to go for a very long time. So if my advice for just introducing new players to D&D in general is run Lost Mines of Phandelver for them. It takes 10 game sessions. They'll get used to how D&D works and how the game works as a whole. And then once they are in, and once they have gotten bitten by the D&D bug, then play the big campaign with them. It only takes a couple months to run them through a short campaign, and them having the experience of what D&D is like really helps when you spring on them the big campaign. That's just I just think for a new player experience, that's the healthiest way to maybe not the healthiest way. I don't know why I'm using that word. I just think that it really is a great way to guide the new player experience into D&D. I think that you absolutely could run D&D for brand new players. It's just that you're adding a bunch of extra rules to the game and a couple conceits to the game that they might not be ready for. So now, if your new players that you're running D&D for the first time are experienced with tabletop role-playing games or tabletop games or video game RPGs in general, don't worry about it.
Interesting question. What led us to the path? I lost the question. Sorry, there's a lot coming in. Okay, there it was. Kyle B asks, what was the thought process behind focusing on the Duchess?
We to be perfectly honest, we wanted to do a really big mini, and we didn't want to do a dragon.
That was
Yeah.
There was that, and then so really we were in a conversation with Ghostfire, and it was like, guys, we can do a big mini. Do you have anything? And we were like, we have some dragons, and then we were like, everybody does dragons. Really, a dragon isn't interesting because you can buy any dragon mini.
So many people do dragons,
and there's so many dragon minis.
There was a part of me that's like, let's do a delirium dragon, but we were like, but we thought this would be more unique.
Yeah, and then the conversation came like, what's a big mini that we can have? And we had already talked about including the adventure for Horror at Ash Bay. Because Horror at Ash Bay is kind of, in our opinion, one of the coolest battles.
We were really proud of that arc.
That arc was really cool to us. The Duchess was a really cool villain. And the Duchess also transcended Dungeons of Drakkenheim, Shadows of Drakenheim, and became a big part of the world. So when we were like, okay, we want a big mini, we want it to be unique and interesting, we want it to tie into what we're already talking about in this book, and we want it to be useful whether you're running Dungeons of Drakkenheim or something further in the outside world. And that's how we landed on the Duchess. And then once we kind of decided that the Duchess was our big mini, we were like, let's throw her on the cover. Let's do all the fun things with her. And she really kind of became the queen of this book, so to speak. I love her.
Couple logistic questions. Warren wants to know, if I purchase an item from the first Kickstarter list, will it arrive early or will it arrive with the completion of the new stuff? If you do get add-ons from Dungeons of Drakenheim as part of the Kickstarter, when you add them into Backer Kit, they will ship with your whole Sebastian Crowe's Guide to Drakenheim order. Although I believe if you get the Dungeons of Drakenheim PDF, you'll get that.
It should pop up soon.
I think that should be pop up sooner. Basically, all your stuff gets bundled together because don't quote me on this. I think from my understanding that this is us basically ordering more stuff.
Yeah.
Right? If you want if you do want to get that and are okay with waiting for that stuff to arrive all together, then go for that. There is still stuff available on the Ghostfire Gaming store that you get now. That will ship right away. Yep. Ben wants to know, how soon do you think that the VTT for Dungeons of Drakenheim might be available? Well, if we hit that stretch goal, I hope that we can get that out as quickly as possible. I would love to get it out, but I also want it to be good. I don't want to rush it. And there's a lot of, we have a very big list of things that we want to do with a VTT packet. We want the VTT packets to feel like Kelly and I have set you up.
Yeah.
Right? Basically, I want the feeling for our VTT package to be like, I just put out everything that I would do to run the game, and I'm going to stand up, offer my seat to you. Here you go. You're in the driver's seat now. Got you all set up. You just run this awesome campaign.
Yeah, we don't have an exact date for you on when we expect it, because what I will say is that we have a good team who's dedicated to working on it and making it as good as possible. And in the past, if you look at our last Kickstarter, Ghostfire was really good at getting things in a timely fashion. It's something that they pride themselves on, and I hope that we can continue that with this Kickstarter.
Yep. Well, we are inching close.
We are very close. We are sitting at 998.
I always think of this, one of my favorite novels of all time is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Okay, yeah.
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 And I love the line of when they go to the restaurant at the end of the universe and the MC comes out and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are very quickly approaching the moment when there will be no more moments."
Is that what we're approaching? The moment where there will be no more...
No.
There's lots of moments.
But whenever I think of a countdown,
right,
or that anticipation, I feel that.
See,
right?
yours is much deeper than mine. Whenever I think of a countdown, I think of Job from Arrested Development with the final countdown as he anyway.
Yeah.
Some of y'all with your questions.
Yeah, fun stuff.
What's your favorite part of Canada? Toronto, obviously.
I like my hometown.
I don't like my hometown.
Also, I just have to say I have growing up my grandmother's home was in a little town on Lake Huron. And over the past summer I've been able to go on the weekends to spend time there. My grandmother passed away a decade. Actually, my grandmother passed away 10 years ago this month. And when I started my PhD, for those of you counting out there, and so going back there to visit, and I still have family that are there. It's so beautiful, and it's just a lovely little town, and the beaches are so nice. And like I remember stepping out there with my partner Kirsten, and we were on the beach, and I was like, "You didn't know any better. You would think that you were in the Caribbean." Right? Like just looking out on, like it was crystal blue. It was really lovely.
You know, you're saying this, and meanwhile, I grew up on Lake Huron. Like,
yeah, it is really pretty though.
My hometown was beautiful. It's just like I go back there to see my parents and my friends, but other than that, it's a very small town. I will say though, like, so my memories of my hometown growing up, in the summer, phenomenal. In the winter, there's nothing. There's nothing to do in the winter. You just hole up inside and wait for the 8 feet of snow to disappear.
Yeah.
But in the summer, I'm along a beach. I can tan all day. I can sit out by the water. I went back there recently to visit my parents. And for the first time in probably 15, 20 years, I walked out to the end of the pier by myself and just sat there for like an hour, just letting the waves roll in. And it was probably one of the most serene moments of my whole adult life. So there is something to say for my hometown.
Yeah. Ashley Jen says, "Wow, PhDs take a long time. It depends on your department, your field, and whether or not you are getting towards finishing your PhD while running a YouTube channel and living through what happened in 2020. I think had I not started the YouTube channel and had that not happened, I think I would have probably finished after 6 years. But I also worked professionally. I worked a day job. Like I had so much because I used to be a theater designer as well, and so I worked professionally while I was doing my PhD studies, and I working at the computer shop for the first couple of years, but too, working on this, and just life takes you in weird places, and so I think in my department the normal time to completion is 6 years, but for me I had a little bit more of a meandering path in finishing my research, which. You know what? Looking back on it, now that I've defended and I am officially Dr. Martin and have accomplished all that we have with the channel and everything like that, I don't think I would have done it any differently at all.
Right.
Yeah.
A few questions that I want to answer here. First of all, I want to answer this one because it's hilarious. How accurate is Letterkenny? More accurate than we want it to be. Have you ever watched Letterkenny?
I have not.
It is filmed, okay, it is filmed about 15 to 20 minutes away from my hometown where I grew up. And I know everything they're referencing. I don't, when I say I know those people, I don't mean I actually know the people that are in that show, but I know those people. I was one of the emo kids. The other question is, somebody mentioned, do you have champagne? And how are you celebrating if you hit 1 million? I will tell you that the reason why we're together in the basement right now is because our partners are actually just upstairs with a bottle of champagne, some wine, some charcuterie. Yeah. And we're just, we're having a bit of a fun evening tonight where after this stream, I mean, we might be able to go upstairs. It's at 999. Uh, so if we finish this stream at 1 million, we're going upstairs and popping that champagne.
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah.
Um,
How did you two meet?
we worked in the same computer shop.
And we fell in love instantly. No, Monty asked me if I wanted to learn about necromancy while we were working together, and the rest is history.
Yep. My PhD is in drama, theater, and performance studies, and my dissertation is titled "Performing Technology." Conceptual. Short title is "Performing Technology," and in fact, a whole chapter of my thesis is actually about live streaming D&D. So I talk about different types of technology that are used in performance and how that's evolved and changed. And that was a cool thing too. I was so glad my PhD supervisor, you remember, she actually came and watched an episode of Dungeons of Drakkenheim.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think I want to write a chapter of my thesis on this. And at the time, she was like, "Are you sure?" But she was very fascinated by it. Actually, my PhD supervisor was super incredible, and I owe her so much.
Somebody asked the question about me now getting my PhD so that we could be the Dr. Dungeon dudes. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going back to school. I'm not doing it. You couldn't pay me to go back to school and do more homework. I'm done. I did my time. I went to film school for those interested. And if you want, I do have a certificate somewhere, it's probably rolled up or in the trash or something, that says I know how to make movies. And that is worth 0% in the film industry. But we'll pretend it's a PhD, and I have a PhD in adequate film knowledge.
Actually, film is an actual discipline, so we'd need to have a...
No, I'm not. I went
honorary.
I went to a practical film school where I got to hold cameras and film commercials, and it was really nice. And I made some good friends there.
Did it just happen?
Did it just happen? Are we there?
Did it?
Oh my god! We did it!
We did it. Oh.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you. We
you.
just hit $1 million. With 15 minutes left
on the stream and 4 hours left in the Kickstarter campaign. I'm so proud of this project. I'm so proud of the whole Drakenheim project and everyone that we've worked with, and it just, and
we're gonna stop taking questions for just a quick second, just to be thankful, because that's 2 Kickstarters that we've done, both of which have hit $1 million, which is just incredible. So everybody in chat, everybody watching this, everybody who backed the project, everybody on our Discord, whether or not you back the project, everybody on Discord, everybody who's a follower of our show.
On Twitch, on YouTube, all of our Patreon supporters, whether you've added us on Twitter, whether you've watched our videos, whether you're watching this is your first time watching one of our videos on this live stream.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just thank you so much. It's so cool to bring. Don't get emotional. It's so cool to bring a world that Monty and I have spent years just riffing on and talking about and adding our little quirkiness to life, and have you all enjoy that. And I'm really proud of Sebastian Crowe's Guide to Drakenheim.
Yeah.
I
think we really upped the ante.
I mean, I also got to say, my boy's on the cover.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I do. There's so many people to thank, and so it's a challenge to make sure that we get them all. I also want to make sure though that Kelly, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You really took charge in this project, because I was super stressed with, life stuff and finishing my PhD, and you really were the force that brought this train forward. I definitely thought in the writing process earlier in this year, because I remember I submitted my manuscript to my supervisory committee, and they told me I had to rewrite the entire conclusion of my thesis after it had already been professionally edited. And that put me in a, like, I was so depressed.
Yeah.
And I couldn't like work on the book. And you powered through and like had so much going on. So thank you. You are deserving of having your character, like the work that you put into this project lives up to the amazingness of having your player character that you created on the cover of it. Like that's like, so there's so much of you in this book, and your character that you created is on the cover of it. You should be really proud because you really made so much of this possible in a way that like I couldn't have done this book without you. I couldn't have done this whole project without you. But like, had it not been for the way that you worked on this project in particular, I don't know if we would have made it.
I thank you for saying that. I mean, this project does mean the world to me. I feel like I got to inject a lot of myself into Sebastian Crowe's Guide to Drakenheim. There's a lot of elements that I think we were dealing with uncharted territory in the world of Drakenheim.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I got to really help decide what that uncharted territory was. But I do want to give credit to you, and I want to thank you as well, because something that we're gonna just congratulate each other here. But one thing that Monty is absolutely incredible at, Monty is a wordsmith in a way that I never could be. I have great ideas. I will give myself credit for that, but I am definitely a screenplay writer. And what would happen is I would hand Monty great piles of ideas that were written out the way that a screen director would write screen direction. Monty would finagle some pieces, and then when I would read it back after you got your hands on it, I would always be blown away. I'm like, I know that my words are here, but Monty just took them and made them beautiful. I'm like planting a vegetable garden, and then Monty takes that and turns it into like an ornate floral arrangement of something absolutely beautiful. So, I thank you for giving me that credit and all of that. But I will say that, like, when you read the beautiful text in this book, Monty helped make it sound as beautiful as it does. Oh. And I thank you for helping me with that.
It is such a privilege to be able to collaborate with a person like you. I think that I've worked in so many collaborative fields professionally, through theater, through my education, everything like that. And I've seen some close collaborators, but like, it's really awesome to have a friend and collaborator like you. And I just feel like there's so many things that, like the support, but also the creativity comes and gels together. Like, I've worked with people who were really supportive, but like didn't necessarily have the creativity. And I've worked with people who were really creative, but were mean. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure everyone's done that. Like, you've worked with someone who's smart, they know they're smart, they know they're creative, but then they don't do like that interpersonal management. And I really value that a lot in the work that. So thank you, man. Big hug. Congratulations.
There you go. You guys get a friend show.
Yeah. But thank you all out there again so much. Like, we can't, as much as we couldn't have done this without each other, we couldn't have done this without you. It was people that were watching our channel from the very beginning who helped us turn up on the YouTube recommendations for all the people that watch it now. It was people who watched our videos that started to leave comments saying, we would love it if we saw you play D&D. Would you consider live streaming? And so we listened to your suggestions and started live streaming. We wouldn't have done it if you hadn't have asked. As we were doing the live stream of Drakenheim, people started asking us, can we get your DM notes? Can you make this an adventure? Can you do this as a book? And we did it because we had an audience that, and people out there like you, that were passionate about the work that we were sharing, that wanted more from this world, wanted more of our creations, and were asking for it. And so we wanted to be able to create those things because we knew there were people out there that were like, you should do this. And that type of encouragement from an amazing community of people is something that I can't understate the value of. And in fact, Sebastian Crowe's Guide to Drakenheim came out of the fact that so many people said, we want you guys to make, we would love to see a subclass that you make. We would love to know more about this world. It's fascinating and inspiring. And so hearing all of that from all of you out there in our community, hearing all of your passion, hearing the stories of the campaigns that you've run, or just the fun times that you've had watching our show. I've heard from people who talked about how they were at the hospital waiting for their baby to be delivered watching our show, or how, you know, they got into D&D and found new friendships because of our videos. And I'm like, what? I'm just a nerd in my basement in Toronto.
Right.
What? And to hear that is an incredible privilege, and I am honored that would be that just the little offering that we have in our little corner of YouTube and our little corner of role-playing games, that would bring some joy, some entertainment, a few hours of fun, or a little bit of comfort in your lives. That's magical to me, and I treasure that. Like, that is so, like, overwhelming, and I can't really believe that, but it's happening. So thank you. I hope that we can continue to make cool things that inspire you. I have always believed that I think if, as an artist, you inspire one person, you are a successful artist. And so knowing that my work has inspired other people, yeah, it's like, I'm so glad for that.
I feel like I will echo everything that Monty said. I don't think I could say it better, and everything that I will say will be repetitive of what he said. But I do want to add in some additional thank yous. I want to thank Joe and Jill.
Yes.
For agreeing to come on this journey with us. Their commitment to Drakenheim, the way that they brought their characters to life, like, they're a huge part of why Drakenheim is successful. The humor and roleplay and just knowledge that they bring, they both constantly teach us things that we didn't know about D&D.
All the time.
We think that we don't like a spell or an ability or a class or a subclass until one of them plays it and just shows us how good it is. And I just, they're two of our best friends, and we treasure them very dearly. I also want to thank Kyle. Kyle has been such an instrumental part of just managing our streams, managing some of the editing, taking weight off of Monty and I, and just, I don't know, being just a good dude to have as the unseen secret member of the Drakenheim crew. I want to thank Shay and Kirsten, our partners, for just the support that they've given us in getting here. Obviously, when your partner's like, I'm going to quit my day job and write D&D books, you need to have some good partners who are like, yeah, all right, let's do it. So thank you to them. And lastly, I want to thank the entire team at Ghostfire Gaming.
I want to name some people specific.
Cool.
I want to say, Phil, you have steered the ship in an amazing way. Coming into Sebastian Crowe's Guide to Drakenheim, you have been awesome at organizing just this project as a whole. So thank you. Matt, thank you so much as well for just steering the ship of Ghostfire as a whole through all the changes that you've been through as well. You two guys in particular, it was wonderful to meet you in person at Gen Con, and I cannot wait to hang out with you more in the future. I want to thank Hannah, who has also been amazing at putting together all of our promo, our social media, organizing the Kickstarter page. Hannah is super creative and super awesome, and so many of the tweets, the promotional stuff, all this like nuts and bolts of just bringing everything in this project together on the Kickstarter side of it. She has been amazing through this, and it was wonderful to work with her again on this project. I want to thank our art director, Anna Christensen, and I want to thank our layout designer, Martin Hughes, who have been it's so cool to see this book coming together, and the two of you are really bringing it with the layout and the art. I also want to thank Simon, who's designed all of our, been in charge of the kind of lead project design of all of the products, the lead product design. The sculptor Leandro on this as well. Who else do we have to thank as well? There's so many people. As soon as I start naming names, I start losing everybody.
I know there was also Matt who did our cinematic.
Yes, our amazing cinematic, Matt. Oh my god, incredible work from you as well. I love the results of how this all came together to their. Have been really, really pleasing, and I know that there are so many other folks at the Ghostfire Gaming team that have helped to bring this project together. Sorry if I've missed anybody calling them up by name, but I know from the bottom of my heart that I am so grateful and pleased to work with such an amazing team of people in bringing this work to life.
Yeah, I again just like thank you to all those people, and again thank you to all of you. We are nearing the end, I suppose. I feel like this is such a good way to end this stream. We thought that we were gonna do this stream, duck out, and then like have to check at midnight to see whether or not we hit it. I had a fear this afternoon that we would hit midnight at $999,000.
But we made it, and we made it because of all of you out there. And what a way to wrap up the stream by hitting it at that moment. It's like we planned it. But we didn't.
We didn't plan it. We didn't know it was going to happen. We didn't plan it,
but you made it possible, and we are so grateful to all of you out there. Once again, I want to thank all of our backers, our patrons, and our viewers. Whatever level of support you've shown for us over the years, whether you have just liked a couple of our videos, or whether you went all in on this Kickstarter and the last one, you mean so much to us. Thank you.
And with that, should we pop some champagne?
I think we should pop some champagne and have a little bit of dinner.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
We're gonna go celebrate. We're gonna go pop some champagne with some people that we love very dearly. And we're going to just have a good night tonight. And we're going to celebrate to all of you. A toast to all of you. If you have champagne at home, you can pop with us. And we'll raise your glasses for yourselves and for the success of this Kickstarter. And thank all of you so much.
There's so much more exciting things to come in the future. And we'll have lots of updates along the way as we get through this process of making this book now come to life, because you have told us you want to see Sebastian Crowe's Guide to Drakenheim. The manuscript is written, but it still falls to us. Playtest all these new things, to make all these amazing products, to put this all together, and we cannot wait to see it all in your hands.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, because seeing all the when Dungeons of Drakenheim shipped, people started getting those, and those pictures started rolling in. That was the best part, and
you can bet some excited photos of me with a special edition Sebastian Crowe cover, screaming.
It's going to be great. Thank you all so much for your love and support. And we will see you next time in Drakenheim. Try it one more time. Let's
Drakenheim?
In Drakenheim. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for your love and support. And we will see you next time
in Drakenheim.